PDR tool time.
Hey, what's happening, everybody? Daniel Grom, how you doing this evening?
How you doing? Awesome.
Good. Yeah, currently got myself and Daniel Grom here. We're waiting for Vinny, and of course Mike, if any of you guys have been paying attention, he is in Hawaii.
Yeah, we tried to get him to call in, and he's like, no, I've got a date with a couple Mai Tais, and he wasn't having it.
Mary says, "Stop sucking eggs, Mike! You no call in!"
Yeah, he was having too much fun on the beach, I think.
Yeah, man.
We'll miss him and be envious.
I don't blame him. So, Daniel, go ahead and introduce. We actually have an interesting show here today. We're going to talk a lot about auto detailing, which is obviously super important for what we do because, we screw things. Us dent guys, we screw things up, and, the detail guys have to fix it unless we're fortunate enough to have a detailer in our shop like Daniel Grom does right here. And he's probably already taken the guy's buffer to the bench grinder, but
yeah,
right.
Yeah, I'm very fortunate in my situation, and before I introduce him, I'll tell you a little bit about how we got in a relationship. Was I had a shop at a different location, and I had a different detailer.
This is sounding a little bit gay. I just want to let you know that about how you guys got into a relationship.
And
I see a couple smiles.
This is California.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, right. Did you guys meet at the methadone clinic next door?
Oh, boy.
No? We got to get the guys laughing right off the bat, though, man. That's how we got to break the ice around here. I got all kinds of people talking about the German Army helmet on last episode, Shane's German Army helmet.
Yeah. So, before I introduce him, I want to tell you a little bit about what led to us getting together and
in this relationship.
In this relationship.
Yeah.
In this gay relationship.
In this special situation.
Is I had another detailer, and I had a really good friend of mine that would bring his cars to me, and he had a black BMW, and one day he just stopped coming. And he invited me over to his house for his kid's birthday party, and we went over there. And driving up, I see his car out in front, and I look at it, and I was like, "Holy crap! He got it painted! Can't believe it." And it was an older BMW, and I thought he got it painted. It looked that good. And I walk up, and I go, "Dude, you got your car painted?" And he goes, and he's like really shy and everything. And he goes, "No, I took it to Auto Sport Detailing to Quinn, and they detailed it." I was like, "You got to be kidding me!" And right then and there, I knew I had the wrong detailer. So, without further ado, I want to introduce you to Quinn Barry. He's the owner of Auto Sport Detailing, and one of the best detailers I've ever met, and I've met quite a few. And say hello.
How's it going, everybody? Quinn with Auto Sport Detailing in Santa Rosa, California. This is going to be my 21st year of auto detailing, and it actually started when I was probably about, 10 years old, washing family's cars and neighbors' cars and dad's cars. Dad had nice cars, so he taught me how to detail. It's really all I know. And 20 years professionally, going on 21 right now.
Well, tell a little bit about what your dad's business was.
Yeah, so Unique, he had an indoor auto dealership in town, used cars, started in the early 80s. He actually sold cars starting when he was about 17 years old. So this is like cars are in the blood. And his lot was all indoors with high-end cars, Mercedes, BMWs, Bentleys, Porsches, Ferraris, Rolls Royces. I mean, you name it, he had them inside. And so I grew up around that stuff. and started, actually sweeping the shop as long as I could remember, looking at the cars, and then it was turned into, wiping them down, and then here we are detailing.
Nice.
Yeah. So when I met Quinn, I was working for his dad doing dents, and his dad was like the premium used car lot. I mean, he always had the badass cars, and everybody knew that it was really exclusive. That's where you go if you want to get a good quality Porsche, used Porsche, or some kind of fancy sports car.
The thing that was really unique too is we're talking about this started in the early 80s. Like now it's kind of common practice. You see these kinds of places. Back then, they just didn't exist. He was like 30 years ahead of time.
Yeah. I've actually the very first time I went to an indoor car dealership, it was quite similar. I mean, the place had, in fact, actually the place was full of a bunch of BMWs. I mean, just packed full of them BMWs. And it was so funny because I actually did their lot one time, okay? And, of course, my bill's like, I went through the whole day or something like that, and my bill was like $1,500. And there was 2 car dealerships operating in this same place. And there was another dent guy in there that was doing that whole $50 a car type thing. Well, obviously, they're not going to pay me that much every time I come out, so they opted to go with him. Hailstorm hit, right, on 2011 here in Ohio. They called me up and asked me if I could come out and service their lot, and I started laughing so hard that it got uncomfortable on the phone. And I like when he asked me that, I full on started laughing in his face and saying, dude, you're calling me right now after you basically used another guy for price because of the price, and now you're calling me when a hailstorm hits, like I'm gonna freaking come help you out now, and I just started laughing that it got to the point where he was like, oh, okay, man, I'm gonna get off the phone now, and got off the phone with me, and I was like, oh man, and it was legitimate. I wasn't trying to laugh. It was so hilarious that as soon as 100,000 cars get hit in the Dayton area, this guy calls me up on the phone knowing that his dude bailed on him, and I'm like, all right, homie, it's now the tables have turned.
Oh, we got Vince now. He joined us. Hey, Vince.
Hey, what's happening, guys?
Of course, he's eating like 10 pounds of pasta, and dude doesn't even gain. Freaking weighs $150.
But he's looking good with my hat on.
That pisses me off, Vince. You get to eat 10 pounds of pasta every show, man. Probably right before you go to bed, you probably eat another big helping of it. And here you weigh $150. Can't even put on a pound, man.
Yeah.
I'm sure that pisses other people off too. You skinny.
It's genetics, buddy. Genetics.
Oh, man.
I'm predisposed. Actually, I'm moving all the time so that, I'm constantly burning calories. That's the thing.
Oh, right.
Whatever.
Yeah,
Yes.
whatever.
So, Vince, meet Quinn.
Quinn, how you doing, buddy?
Good. Yourself?
Good. Pleasure to meet you. Sorry, I was stuck in traffic on the 405 heading to Long Beach.
Yeah, it's an everyday struggle.
Down in the
Exactly.
LBC.
Down in the LBC. Yes. Well, thanks for coming on, Quinn. So I'm assuming that we're getting a brief history of who you are and where you come from and all that good stuff.
Yep,
You got it.
Nice.
I got a lot of questions for you about this detailing stuff, Quinn, because I'm starting to notice I'm friends with a lot of detailers on Facebook. And I'm also a member of a couple detailer Facebook groups. And these guys are absolute freaking pros at making the process look so mystical and amazing.
Fun.
Yeah.
Amazing. Fun, like it's a fairy tale.
Oh, dude, they're like whipping that car up with like frosting all over it. Like they're shooting it from a machine now that makes it look like the whole car's covered in this bubbly soap stuff.
Foam gun.
A foam gun. And see, you guys are doing something that needs to happen I was just thinking about that this morning. I'm like, these guys are doing something that needs to happen in the dent removal industry. We've effectively let our process kind of become a little bit boring.
Mm-hmm.
You
need some pixie dust.
Right. If you look at the detailing industry and you look at what you guys are doing out there, how like you guys are getting them badass photos now, you're putting the foam guns on cars, you're cleaning interiors, you're getting perfect photos, you're making sweet videos out there, man. I mean, I was like looking at some of the detailers going, man, you guys are doing it right, some of you guys out there.
Well, they're selling an experience, really, right?
Yeah.
That's what we should be selling.
there's a lot of guys that have gotten really good at glorifying the process. I mean, that's still on your hands and knees at times. You're still bent over inside of cars. You're still scrubbing dirty things. I mean, it's not as glorious as the picture they paint, but you know.
But that's the cool thing of when they glorify it for people to look at it. They're like, oh my God, that guy's got a white glove and he's detailing a rotor on a Ferrari.
Yeah.
And there's not even a piece of dirt on his white glove.
Yeah.
Now, Quinn, how long have you been sharing a shop with our hairy monkey over there, Daniel's son?
Yeah, I've been with the hairy monkey since we've been here since 2007, I believe.
You got to do a lot of pet hair removal on his cars, or Daniel,
Yeah.
does he have you like do hair removal on his cars like once
I
a
make
week?
Hair baths regularly.
So how do you remove that type of hair? I know it's all like curly and mangy looking, like it probably gets stuck in the fibers.
Yeah, it does. It weaves its way in there. Exactly.
So Daniel probably hired you just so you could get him out of his car because we know he's like a piece of Velcro. He just gets stuck in there and you got to like pry him off.
You actually have to be a Tetris piece to get inside of his car. It's so full of shit. It's crazy.
Oh my God, man. I heard that anti-static spray works pretty good.
Just get some bounce fabric softener sheets and wipe them down real quick before he gets in.
Yeah.
Be able to slip in and out.
Yep.
So let me ask
Come on
you
now, it's not beat up Daniel time.
I know that's good. I don't know. We were going on a good run there. That's pretty good.
And don't get him going. Yeah.
So let me ask you, Quinn. Daniel always talks about you selling like high-end type, expensive detail services. I mean, how do you go about doing that in the detail business? How do you take people come in, they're like, well, I thought a detail cost $125, and they come to you and you tell me it's like $900. I mean, how do you justify that? How do you sell your services like that?
Yeah, a lot of it really is just about the time that it's going to take and the results that people want. I mean, it's obviously the right car. It's obviously the right client. It's the person that's been to all those places, that's paid the $100, $200, $300, and they've been nothing but dissatisfied. They've seen their friend's car that looks amazing. They come in one time for us to do their car, and it literally looks, it's a transformation. I mean, it adds value to the car that they see the minute that they drive away or they come to pick it up. And so I think they come here already knowing we have the reputation for being the best and probably the most expensive around. So they're kind of already set up for that. And then once we start looking at it, it's adds and options like, do they want the wheels removed and the calipers white glove? Do they want, all these things? I think though that we have more value than a lot of other people that I see that are glorifying the detail business. I mean, there are people that are saying, hey, let's take this brand new Ferrari off the lot and do an $8,000 detail. I mean, let's be realistic. I mean, I've taken a brand new Ferrari and done, a $2,000 detail. Hours we're charging and it's according to its value, but we're not overdoing it either. I think you get a realistic result and you pay what the price that's fair.
And it's funny that you said that because I shared a shop with a detailer for a year and a half here down here in Orange County, and he was a paint perfection detailer, and I often thought that he was actually damaging the cars rather than making the cars better. He would use the orbital, like the rupees or the other products out there. But he was so aggressive trying to get the orange peel off the car.
Yeah.
That what I noticed is he was opening up the pores of that clear coat and taking off so much of a layer that, it looked good. But how long or how many more times could this guy wash and wax his car and get it polished out before there's no more paint on his car?
Yeah, it's totally true. I mean, longevity is the first thing. I mean, we want it to look a certain way and we want it to have that, that shine in the gloss. But if it's short-lived and you can only do it once, then you're ruining the car. And you have to keep that in mind. It's not something that regrows. It's, we want it to look a certain way, but achieve realistic results for sure. And cutting the orange peel off on a factory finish, you don't want to do that unnecessarily.
Sure. And I saw him start on a Porsche Carrera 911, and he started on the door. and it looked like the constellations. It looked like you were looking up at the sky out in Colorado or up in Tahoe where you see everything. And I'm like, dude, what are you doing? And you would think he would stop there, but he continued to did the whole car and went around the whole thing and spent 3 days perfecting this paint on a factory Porsche. And the guy came and he sold it to him and everything. But I'm thinking, he just ruined that car. That car needs a paint job, and it's going to be a $20,000 to $30,000 paint job.
Was he wet sanding it? What was he doing?
No, he was using an aggressive pad on the rupees style. Is it rupes or rupees?
It's rupis.
Rupis. Okay.
I've heard it every way under the sun, but the rep at their training seminars, it's rupis, but
right.
I like rupee better.
Rupee.
Yeah. Daniel likes to get rupee.
It just sounds better. Yeah, it's like the time I have actually been roofied before.
Wow.
Like straight up. Like
you are damn sexy.
No, here's the thing. That. It was intended for some other chick. It was intended for a girl.
You told me that you were in a gay bar.
Yeah.
Did you just say it was intended?
I was in. Well, I'm not going to go into total detail, but I'm going to save that for another show.
It was called the Mine Shaft bar, right?
Back to the orange peel thing, you made me just think of something too. The paint, to me, is a lot more durable before it gets cut into it, and once you start cutting into it, it's easily scratched easier, and it just seems to be a softer finish. And so, you're kind of opening a can of worms there, I think.
Sure. I think it's literally because I have a painter, a business partner that does bumper repair. And I know just from watching paint dry, because it's always fun to watch paint and clear coat dry. But what happens, it dries out the outside first, but it's still vaporing off underneath. And the paint is soft as you take layers off underneath, or the clear coat is soft as you're taking layers off. So I know exactly what you're saying, which leads us to, some of the questions that we have that are going to be beneficial to our PDR technicians out there and our listeners, which is, a lot of us color sand after we repair a dent. I don't know if you ever see Daniel do it. I would imagine Daniel does it on every single dent.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he sends them over to my side of the shop and I do them for him.
Oh, okay. So he doesn't do them.
I wouldn't say that, but...
So
that's how I learned PDR. I was taught by an old Korean guy, and he gave me 2 little pieces of sandpaper, and he just said, "Sand on, sand off."
Oh, geez.
Sand on,
Japanese
sand
guy.
off. And we went the whole week, and I was like, after I was done the whole week, I'm like, "What the hell, man? You didn't teach me anything." And he's like, "Yes, I teach you most fundamental principle of PDR: sand on, sand off." So there it was.
So basically, when we color sand after repairing a dent, you've seen Daniel's work at times, I'm sure, where you see little pick marks or
totally.
micro fractures that we're trying to just level off, just knock that top layer off real quick.
Yep.
And I myself, I color sand all the time, so I have a pretty good concept of it. But for our listeners out there, that is there a general idea or general rule of thumb that you could go by or that you could share with our listeners to do it in a way that's not going to damage paint and make it easier, to buff off?
Yeah. And that hologram the hell out of it.
That too.
Yeah, the thing is it's going to be tougher for these guys because how many tools do they bring with them if they're, mobile PDR guys or if they have a shop? But
I can tell you the majority of the guys, they have a drill with a wool pad on the end of it. That's spinning as fast as a drill, and then they might
or a Milwaukee. Milwaukee's got a little buffer, I think, a lot.
Yes.
That's the one that I use the most. Is the little?
So I use that too.
Yeah.
The best way to do it would be to start with when you do it. What sand grit are you starting with? What paper?
2000.
I start with 2000, but it's also like 3 months old. So it's probably like 3,000 or 4,000.
Yeah.
And do you go with a finer paper after that, or that level is good enough to go straight to your buffing?
Sometimes I do graduate to 2,500, and then I buff from 2,500.
I normally go to 2000, just straight from 2000.
Yeah. So that's good. I mean, I wouldn't go probably any more coarse than 2000. I really like to go even finer, like 3000 and 5000, and use the 3M, their Trizac discs. We have a DA that I use it on. It gives you a super flat, smooth finish. And then it also is less compounding time, so you might not use as aggressive of a compound or as aggressive of a pad to get out those really fine marks. It's probably more than what your normal guys would want to do, but it's the best way to do it, I think.
Sure.
And then after you've done that wool pad and that compound, whatever they're just deciding to use, then always going with a orbiting machine after that, like the Rupus. And they make multiple sizes of them, electric and air, that these guys could pick up and take with them, that will get rid of those holograms, if it matters. I mean, light colored finishes on a lot out in, outside of California where people are overly anal, it's probably fine to just go with the wool pad and down the road. The darker finishes for a nicer car, the orbiting finish, that you'll get afterwards gets rid of the holograms, and that's a lot better. But I guess to answer the question, yeah, 2000 is great, 3000 is great. The wool pads, either the white, twisted wool. They've got so many variations of wool pads that everybody offers now. You can get a wool pad that cuts the wool pad and like a wool pad and gets out the sand scratches, but it also finishes finer. 3M even has a yellow one. Lake Country has a bunch of different, pads too that will remove the scratches but minimizing the swirls afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
Sure.
Probably work out good for people.
That Trizac 5000 is like using a wool pad. They say it actually takes it down to the level of using a wool pad on like a black finish. We used to buy that stuff. That stuff is expensive. It's like $100 for a box of 10.
It's crazy expensive, and it doesn't last very long. I mean, I've got all kinds of gripes with it,
and you got to watch edges with that stuff. That stuff will buzz through the edge, like the edge of a door, in like 2 seconds.
Yeah, it does. But getting rid of, just taking the place of that, like we used to use the heavy duty rubbing compound that you could feel the grit inside of it.
Yeah.
And you're going over a car and it's just digging swirls into the finish that then it takes you so many more hours to remove. So the concept is, let's not create those to start with.
Yeah. Oh, that stuff is amazing. You're totally right. We painted a whole half of a brand new, like a Toyota Highlander. It was only like 2 months old, and painted the whole half of the car, and we ended up getting dieback. You guys know what dieback is?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, so So it basically it looks like crazy orange peel that shrinks up during the curing process because the chemical was coming back into it while it was trying to release, and it causes dieback. And oh man, did that 3M that Trizac basically saved us multiple hours. Finish looks freaking beautiful when you're done with that. And you said it perfectly that it takes out the swirls that a wool pad would leave, because a wool pad's going to dig in there. Swirls, basically, tell me, Quinn, swirls are basically, from my understanding, just fine scratches.
Totally. Microscopic. I mean, everybody comes in here, they've got swirls on their car, they think, but most of the time what they're looking at is spider webs, what we call, or just natural wash scratches that are an occurring thing with washing, drying, and handling your car. Swirls, to me, are hologram-type swirls that are created by somebody improperly using a buffer. So something that's spinning in a circle at a high speed, too aggressive of a pad, too aggressive of a compound or polish, and then not finishing the steps properly, you end up with those swirls. Exactly.
And one of the ways people end up with them swirls on a buffer, correct me if I'm wrong, I've done some detail training at Automotive International, and one of the things that they taught us, because that's right here in Cincinnati. So Tim Bruni's the technical director. Ron Ketchum's a good friend of mine. He used to be big in the detail. He was right up there with the Bud Abrahams and all that, type guys. But really technical dude. And they basically trained us that tipping your buffer sideways, creating hot spots, is what created the swirls. You want to have even. You want to run less RPMs. You want to lay the pad flat and even. You never want to dry buff. A lot of guys think that you want to dry buff to the point where there's no product on there, but they were saying that dry buffing is something that causes swirls. So you always want product under there, making some action happen. And they went over all the different reasons, and they said you want to go a checkerboard pattern, kind of like the way it was painted at the manufacturer. And would you say all that stuff's accurate, Quinn?
Yeah, absolutely. You're on track for sure. The product has a lubricant to it, so as soon as it dries up, you lose the lubricant. You're creating friction. You don't want to use too much pressure with the tool. You want to use about the weight of the tool, maybe your hand weight, lower RPM, and definitely like the cross hatching. So up, down, left, right, overlapping everything. I mean, there's a million tricks, but yeah, you just named off like most of them.
And would you say cleaning your pad would be an important technique?
Yeah, I've actually gone into a lot of shops, body shops in the area that really struggle with polishing, and we do a lot of their work. And so they'll have me come in and just kind of see what they're doing. And 99% of the time, I ask them to show me their process. And the first thing I see is a pad that's been used to buff, the last month worth of cars just sitting there gummed up and nasty. And that's new pad each time, new towels, cleaning your pads. I mean, we use a pad. It might not, one pad for one, like the wool pad might not make it through one whole car. We might switch through 3 or 4 wool pads in that process.
Wow, man, that's pretty cool. That's pretty awesome to know.
Mm-hmm.
And do you? Because I know centering the pads is important too, so that way you don't get a wobble in the buffer.
Totally.
Now, do you ever use the clip extension in the center that you snap the pads into the middle?
I've tried a bunch of them. So there's one that used to be made by 3M ended up buying that patent, and I can't even remember who it is that made it, but it's almost like a ratchet where the socket pops on and off the ratchet. Yeah. So I used those back in the day, and I love that system. Super smart. The guy that invented it deserves a high five. I didn't love their pads or their products as much, but that device is money. We use more of the Lake Country or 3M style pads where there's just a circle in the center and use a centering device. So you'll slip that into the backing plate, and the pad goes over the top of it and centers it. And it's mostly because I like those pads. 3M bought it. Obviously, they want to mint for all those pads that have that. I think it's 3M. Maybe it's Meguiar's. Somebody bought it. They want to mint for those pads with that locking mechanism.
Oh, right.
Of course. And it's great.
Yeah. Something pretty interesting. You might like this, Quinn. You said you have a certain way to center your pad. Well, I had this dude. I got to give Ron a shout out. He was in my shop not too long ago. You guys probably met him at the Mobile Tech Expo. Ron was helping us break down our booth and all that stuff. But he showed me this really cool technique. You know how you get the little hole in the middle of your pad?
Yep.
He takes a bottle of touch-up and puts it in the middle and then just sticks it right into the hole into the buffer and then slides the pad off onto the buffer.
Like it.
Perfectly freaking centered. So a little bottle of touch-up perfectly centers your pad.
There's your tech tip.
And so the centering tools that we have, that's a good.
I was going to hold off on it, but I was scared I was going to forget it. So I was like, I better say it now.
No, that's good. So those sticks are obviously like the perfect diameter. The tool that we use for centering looks just like that. It's just a little cylinder that's yellow and plastic. Same thing, exact same setup. But now we'll stop buying those because we have hundreds of cans of the little touch-ups. We got free ones.
Dude, it fits perfect, man. It fits perfect. Now, microfiber towels, do you always buy new ones, or do you have a service that provides you with them?
Yeah, so we launder our own towels here, and we do it all by color coordinated for every aspect of the detail. So we're doing our own towel service, and I've spent years and years sourcing like the right towels for each step of the way. And the problem with it that I found is all these towels, if you go this far with it, all of these towels are made every batch in a different plant somewhere overseas. So the quality varies so much. You really get what you pay for, and finding someone that's got a plant that's making the same towels in the same plant with the same stuff every time. Because you'll open one order to the next, and they'll lint, and you'll get these little fiber lints all over the windows that drive me crazy. Or the towel just flat out will scratch finishes. I mean, I've been dealing with that for years. We have a source now for really good towels. They sell tons of them, and they're the same towel every single time, and you can get them whatever color you want. So you can break down the process. We use blue for windows, green for the body, yellow for the interior. Just any elimination of cross-contamination, the better. And then washing them all individually, same process.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because there's nothing better than a microfiber on a window. I mean, I remember back in the day, people might not know this about me. When I was 18 years old, I was manager of It was a $2 million car wash up in my neck of the woods, and I was doing PDR out of there, but I also had built on their express detailing department. And so I was managing this entire facility, including the people. It was a full service one where people did the finishing on the ends. And, at the beginning, we had people working, prepping the cars and all that stuff. And then we had a detail shop on the other side. You'd have probably loved it, dude. The cars come to you washed before you detail them. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's already been run through.
Yeah. And the funny thing is that I was in charge of the detailing. So I would have a detail there, and I would bring over a staff when they were standing around doing nothing of 10 people. And I'd say, all right, guys, it's time for your training. And literally, I'd have every person on each window, and I'd be expecting everything they did. No, you missed a spot here and this and that, And we literally got our cars detailed by our front-end staff just coming over and me running training drills on them all the time. Right. But back then, we didn't use microfibers for the windshields. We used these blue towels that we used to get.
Yeah, Huck towels. That's what all the car washes use. They're like a blue kind of gas station-y type towel.
Yeah, them things worked good after they got broke in. But to begin with, I remember that we had to wash them in vinegar.
Wow. You got me on that one. I've never even heard that before.
That was the technique. I remember when we got a brand new load in, you had to put a certain amount of vinegar in there, and I guess the vinegar did something to the towels. I don't know what it did. I was just, okay, this is what we do.
Yeah, we actually put vinegar in our extractor machines for doing carpets. Maybe this is my tech tip. It's not really that exciting, but we actually add vinegar to the solution that runs through the carpets, and it actually does soften the carpets and give it kind of this softer, nicer, lush feel. So maybe it's the same thing with those towels.
That's probably what it was, because them things came in stiff and may have scratched the surface without the vinegar.
Yeah, so maybe we should wash our dickies in vinegar.
Right.
Now, I was also told don't dry microfiber towels. It's better to just fluff them and they'll last longer.
Yeah, so we do them on low heat, and that's definitely true. High heat melts them out. There's another thing here too, actually. The soap that you use to wash the microfiber towels in, that's a big thing. Regular laundry soap doesn't do the trick. So we actually use, there's a company that we get our towels from that makes a special soap for washing them, and it actually keeps them soft. Maybe it's just vinegar. It doesn't smell like it. I'm not sure, but it does make a big difference.
I think Daniel gave me some of that. Did you give me some, Daniel? Are you still awake, Daniel?
Yeah, I'm here.
No,
I don't think I gave you anything like that. No.
Someone gave me some soap that was for microfibers. I thought it might have been you.
Yeah. Wasn't me. So one of the things that I want to talk about is, okay, the process of you're done with your dent, or you're in the middle of your dent and you want to just finalize it. And wet sanding might be the best process. And sometimes wet sanding, what it does, if you've got a deep dent, wet sanding will highlight your lows and let you finish off your dent a lot better. And then you can go in with a sharp tip and hit all your lows, and then polishing it out. So what I've learned from Quinn is I actually don't use wool pads. I haven't used a wool pad unless it's got like aggressive scratches from whatever dented the dent. That's the only time I ever bring out one. But normally I use Lake County, and he buys from Auto Geek. I buy from Auto Geek, and I buy the Lake County or their Rupees 3-inch pads. And I usually start with a yellow foam pad. And I use the Rupees course, which is, I think, the yellow cap on their Rupees bottle. It's a black bottle with a yellow cap on it. And that's what I start with. And that usually does a great job, just those two things. And then if it's a black car, then I go to the fine, which when you put it out on the car, it's kind of a gray material. And that's what I finish off with. And then I use a regular polisher. I use the Snap-on polisher, but you guys are saying that the Milwaukee polisher is the one to go with. Either one of those. But then I finish it off with the Rupees orbital. And what that does is take care of all the holograms.
Woo, Lord, you're doing a lot more work than I'm doing, son.
Same here.
What he's actually doing is, I think the future of the polishing is, I think that they're trying to eliminate the rotary altogether, and that if you can do the 3,000, 5,000 thing and go straight with the Rufus or whatever other forced action orbiting polisher, you'll never even get the holograms to begin with. I think that's the direction he's going there.
But what I find is it takes longer. If I have my Milwaukee, if I use I have two different compounds that I use. One is proprietary, and I will eventually sell it, but which I'll send you some samples of up there.
Yeah, please.
And then I finish with the Mazerna, the gray one, which is, I believe, the Rupees fine, just rebottled.
It's always the exact same product.
But yeah, and don't get me wrong with the Rupees and the orbital. I think I could cut out 2,000 sand marks faster with a wool pad and go right to a black pad with some fine polish. And on an orbital, I have an orbital thing that was my tech tip months ago. It's called the Wobbler, and I hit that with the orbital. It's an attachment on my Milwaukee, and I'm done. Once in a while, if there's something left on it, it's because I didn't clean off the fine pad, or I was too lazy to go grab a new fine pad.
And I agree. I think the rotary is the trick for blasting out sand scratches instantly. It does something else. The paint it happens faster. And I, in my opinion, in my eyes, I still think it does a better and it looks better job. But that's old school, right? We've been doing this for years, and it's such an art that they're just not teaching, and people aren't learning it anymore. And they're trying to make it more repeatable process. Right. And so I agree with you completely.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, my system's similar to Daniel's. I got a 3-step too, but I use the 3M Finesse line, which is a rubbing compound, and a second step for other cars other than the color black, and then a third step is a polish on black. John,
that's what I used to use, and then I found out that the 3M product has formaldehyde in it. And what you get...
Woo! We used to smoke that back in the day, son. No, I'm just kidding.
What happens...
I never could get a hold of any of that.
If you look at that after a few weeks, those holograms come back because of that. And that's why the Rupees products is a little bit better product. You won't have... you might have a happy customer leaving, but in a few weeks, they look at the car or somebody remarks on their car that, hey, what's that going on there? And you don't want that. You don't want them ever being discouraged with your service.
You don't want them ever to see where the repair was made.
Well, we haven't had a problem with that. I mean, we've buffed a lot.
You never will here.
Well, no. We have a lot of customers that come back after we've done full blow paint jobs to their cars and then buffed them out. And then I get a lot of repeat customers, of course, with the dent removal service. And I haven't had any of that happen with our with the compound process.
Yeah.
You might not. You might, a lot of people aren't really that crucial about stuff.
And I tend to, I'm one of them guys, I remember when I repaired something previously. And I always go out and I look and I try to find my last repair. I don't know why. I got this thing where, if I fix somebody's car before and they come to me and I'll remember where it was, I'll go try to find it. You know what I mean? To see if I can, if I missed anything or whatever. You know what I mean? And I guess that's just a habit that I do. There was one time I did this guy's hail damage car. He told me he has 5 dents on his car. I get there, there's 50 dents on his car, on his roof, right?
Did you only fix the 5?
I said, dude, I can do these for you. And he didn't want to spend over so much money. I said, I can do it for that cost. I said, but I'm here to tell you, I'm just going to give each dent 2 or 3 pushes and I'm done. So he said, sure. And I went through that roof, man. I went through that roof in 45 minutes or something like that. Hopped in the truck and I left. And in the back of my head, I was like, oh man, that probably looked like shit. Right? Well, on my way back, he called me the next 6 months or something like that. He had a door ding. I went out there, and I'm telling you what, I tried to find a spot on that roof, and it took me about 20 minutes before I could find a couple little push marks. And ironically, that's something as dent technicians, we get so fixated on little tiny flaws when we're out there doing something and we're in the grind doing it that we think it's much, much worse than it really is. And then when we leave there, we have this vision in our mind. I see it with my students all the time. They're working on the littlest nitty-gritty ever, and I'm like, dude, you're finished. This is so perfect. And they're like, no, you don't understand. You see all this, it looks like shit. So when we get so fixated on something, we think that just the littlest flaw looks like crap, but then when we go back, we're like, holy crap, I can't even find where it was, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess that's why I kind of always try to find my work afterwards. And I have yet, I mean, I'm just being honest, guys, I haven't seen that happen with the 3M products. Every body shop that I know in this area uses that product line.
Think of the 3M product, Quinn.
I think they have some stuff that's really good. I mean, I really do like their extra heavy duty rubbing compound. It gets the sand scratches out like nothing else, and it finishes really fine. I think we used them for years, a long time, and I think developing the system for me, I even used it in combination. I would use the rubbing compound to get out the sand scratches with the wool pad, and then I would go to Minzerna and the Rupus after that, and we did that for years, and it worked amazing.
It might be an environmental thing too, because out here in California, we're blasted with the sun, a lot more than you are in Ohio.
For sure. I mean, I think our customer base here expects something totally different. I don't know about exactly in Ohio, but in other parts of the country that I've seen, people's level for detail is so much different in our area. I think they might be looking at things differently too.
They could. And cars out here, they last a lot longer. Growing up in Chicago, you got a new car every 3, 4, or 5 years because it turned into a rust bucket from, all the salt on the road. And it might be the same type of scenario in Ohio as well.
Possible.
There might be a faster turnaround in cars, and people aren't as picky or particular. But, my HHR that I just got rid of, it was 10 years old, and it was still perfectly fine. It looked like a brand new car.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we tend to get a lot of folks that just flip cars, around here. Like, nobody keeps cars longer than probably, like 10 years is somebody who's being real conservative about flipping their cars. So we get a lot of that. Just car dealers everywhere around here. Every corner there's a car dealer.
Sure.
Yeah. When you're finishing off these full jobs with 3M, you're finishing with the rotary, or are you switching to a Rupus style polisher at some point?
I'm going to be honest with you. I actually only use one buffing pad, and it's a mid-level buffing pad, and it's one that you can't even find. Some guy sold them to me in St. Louis at Ryan Hampton's shop. He invented these buffing pads that have these cuts around the edge of the pad, and they're called the Turbo Buff pad. And
go get one.
Yeah, I'll go get one. I'll go get it. And it's a mid-level pad. It fits on the end of my Milwaukee. And in all honesty, a lot of times my sandpaper that's 2,000 grit, like Vince said, it's probably 5,000 grit because it's literally, I use the same piece of sandpaper for like 3 years. So my sandpaper that I'm using right now is probably 3 years old. And that thing, like literally sometimes I don't even have to put rubbing compound on it. It's so light that I can use just the mid-level polish with the polishing pad. And most of the time if I'm compounding, I'm just using a polishing pad instead of a compounding pad because it's that light. You know what I mean? Like literally I can buzz it over there and within 3 seconds and it's gone. It's shined up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
We've all kind of developed our system that works for us and works for our clients. And, it's different for everybody. But the PR guy that's pushing the dents out and has a little bit of those dimples, the customers came in looking at something that was big, maybe the size of a softball or something. And now we're talking about it's minimized to these little teeny dimples. You knock those down real quick, hit it with a buffer. It's shiny. The sand scratches are gone. Maybe you did a wool pad and a foam pad. Like, it's a miracle. They're stoked and they're leaving, and it's easy for them to have those things in their tool case as they're going around doing those jobs.
Yeah, and to clarify, I don't do like whole panels. You know what I mean? Customers will ask me, they'll be like, "Well, can you go around my car and buff off of these scratches?" And I'm like, "Nah, there's a detail guy down the road that does that." I tend to just focus on dents. If there's a scratch in my dent, I'll buff it. If not, I got a detail guy 1 block away. I send them all over there. I don't like it. I don't like to deal with it. I don't want to buff a whole panel with my little I don't even want to break out my big buffer. I paid $500 for this giant Milwaukee cordless buffer, and I don't even want to break it out.
Yep.
Praise, you do your job, you know what I mean? And I keep my detail guy busy, and then I'll just stay busy fixing dents because I'm perfectly content with that.
Yeah, that's our relationship here, right? I'm not trying to do any dents, and he's not trying to do any detailing. But if there's a scratch or dimple in the dent that he's working on, he's going to take care of it. If it's more than he wants to handle, it's simple. He just moves it 3 bays over, and I take care of it.
Yeah.
Give him that $500 Billy.
That's right.
That's what I would do.
There's a lot of talk. It's been out for a couple, 2-3 years now, maybe even longer.
I'm gonna go grab that buffer pad.
Yeah. There's a lot of people in our industry that have been coming across the ceramic coats, the ceramic coating on the cars. And there's a lot of people that ask questions about what you can and can't do when it comes to, once we do our repair on paintless dent removal, can you glue pull effectively, or is it going to damage the $2,000 or $3,000 coating that they just got put on their car? Or, say you do have pick marks and you do need to cut and buff, where is it okay to color sand and buff on ceramic coatings and then just polish it out as normal and send them on their way? So if you could answer some of those questions for our listeners, that'd be great too.
Yeah, you can do all of those things to the coated panels. You're just removing the coating. That thing's crazy. So you buff on the end of it.
Check it out. It's got these little vent things all over it, right?
Oh, okay.
So the edge of the pads never tear up.
Yep.
And yes, you can use the end of it to actually get in there and buff with it as well.
So you could use the edge of the pad or the face of the pad. That's pretty.
Yeah, they call this thing, it's called the turbo buff. You see that right there?
Wow. Yep.
And the weird thing, it's got the triangle, sticker thing or whatever, or Velcro. But see, this is a mid-level. I don't know if you guys can tell the texture of that. Like, it's definitely not a cutting compound. You guys see that?
Yeah, it looks really soft.
So it's this is his cutting version.
Wow.
Yeah.
But I found that as a cutting version, it works well as a polisher. I mean, it's a nice, happy.
I'm with you on that. I like the foam pads better than the wool pads. I think they do a better finish job. They do the job to cut out those scratches, and then they finish it off.
You know what's happening as you spin that too? It opens up.
And yeah, see that?
Yeah.
And if you notice something, it kind of orbits.
So for our listeners, it looks like a saw blade. It has these spiral cuts in the edge of the foam pad. And as it
Okay, John.
It flares out. Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Now you're being annoying.
Sorry, man. I was getting, I was kind of getting into it. I was just watching it spin, spin, and spin.
No.
I was having a flashback.
But
while you stepped away, John, we were talking about ceramic coatings, what you can and can't do.
Yeah, go back to that.
Standing on it, yeah, because that's kind of it.
I mean, if there's a dent there and you need to get it out, I mean, you got to. If the customer had that car ceramic coated, then you just need to let them know ahead of time that it's going to need to be recoated. Whoever applied it, they need to go back to that person and have them do what needs to be done. You can certainly wet sand and buff and do all your normal. I don't know about the glue pulling thing. I mean, I'm assuming that's going to take it off probably. If not the glue itself, the solvents you use afterwards or whatever to clean it. And there's also now a million different coatings out there, and they're coming across the sea faster than anything else that's happening right now. But you certainly can wet sand them, polish them, buff them, do your normal stuff, your dent removal. And when you do buff it, that area, the ceramic coating is going to be gone, and they need to have that reapplied there. Some people might not even care. We're talking about a 2-inch area. They might say, I'm going in 6 months and have it redone anyways. Some people might want to go back to that guy right now and have them polish and reapply the coating to that spot, which all can be done.
Okay. And what's your take on ceramic coating? Do you think it's another fad, kind of like the Teflon coating that went on years ago?
It's not like
Come and
Teflon.
go, or do you think
I'm so on the fence with it. I've tried quite a few of them. I think there's more fakes than there is real stuff out there. I I've played with a few of them. I've applied it to a handful of different cars. It definitely gives you a water beating action and ease of wash like some of the best paint sealants that I've ever used. It's definitely a process. If it's done properly, I think it does work. You could YouTube video this for the rest of your life. I'm not 100% sold that it's for everybody. I don't think it's for every car or every process. If you do it to a car that the people are at the car wash once a week with the wash and scratch, it's going to just destroy it. I think it's an enthusiast product for sure for the right car. I think that it's probably a bit over marketed and oversold. And some of the numbers I'm seeing now, 5,000, 6,000, it's getting kind of crazy. But if we're talking about a $300,000 car, I guess it's all relative.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Thanks. That's what I needed.
Quinn, back in the day, I remember there was something going on, somebody putting a coating on around here, and I don't know what coating it was, but occasionally I would buff through, like if I sanded a car, I would sand through the actual coating, not the clear coat. You could tell it was some coating that was applied to the vehicle. And I want to say it was probably that Z-Barts. We have Z-Barts around here. It was like their Mop and Glow product, kind of like a Xylon, like putting Mop and Glow on the car.
Yeah.
And I'm here to tell you, man, I've had to chase that thing halfway down a panel before I could finally get the edge to blend in.
Yeah, for sure.
Has that ever happened to you guys?
No, not out here.
Yeah.
We don't have Z-Bart on the West Coast.
There's been a couple times where literally, it looks like you burnt the clear coat, but you didn't burn the clear coat because the paint's still shiny underneath, and you're like, oh, crap. So then you got to start buffing the edges, and it just keeps growing and growing until eventually you feather one edge in, and then you got to go around the whole thing and keep buffing until you eventually get that sucker feathered in.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm. So the company that you mentioned, right, I think I've seen them. They have installations all over the East Coast, and you take your new car to them, right, and they undercoat it and coat.
Yeah. They drill 50 holes in the car when they rust proof it.
Yeah,
wow, awesome.
and all they do is they squirt grease in there. It's hilarious.
Yeah,
wow.
So they don't even use nowadays they got these little really thin things that you can fog the panel, fog the inside of the panel with rust proofing. They still don't do that. They run drills in all the holes, and they're 3/8 of an inch. And which is freaking awesome for it. They're so common around here. The first thing I do when I see a quarter panel dent is I pop the door open to see if it's been Z-Barted. And if it has, I've got 3 or 4 holes to pick from.
And easy access.
Yeah, and it's easy access. And I know that I can get into all the doors and all that stuff. They have literally gave me beautiful. But let me tell you where it rusts. The hole. They don't coat the hole. Or they don't paint it or anything like that. So every time you pull off one of them little plugs, you'll notice the rust starting on the hole.
Yeah.
That's scary.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I used to have to fix a lot of their the Z-Bart. Also, I don't know if they still do, but they would do aftermarket sunroofs or moonroofs back in the day.
Yeah.
Here they are cutting a hole in the roofs of cars right through the brace and just chewing it up.
Oh, man.
The gasket around the edge so you don't see it, and then pop it in a moonroof.
Hey, well, you heard the old story real quick. I know we got to go to tech tips here in just a moment, but you heard the old story about the guy in St. Louis who oil canned a dent really bad on a roof and ended up taking it over to Z-Bart. They used to have a $99 sunroof they'd install. You remember them ones that you just twisted and it popped open and it closed? Well, he went and had one of them installed on the roof and told the customer they were the 100th customer and they won a sunroof.
Wow.
So that way his oil can dent was gone, and there it was, you're the 100th customer, you won a sunroof. Woo!
Traded it for a water leak instead.
Yeah. So,
That's funny.
all right, guys. So Vince, what do we do, buddy?
How's it go again?
Stop sucking eggs. Time for tech tip.
There you go. That was better than what I could do.
Boing.
Sucking eggs. Time for PBR tech tips.
Man,
People
Vince,
think we're
you dropped the
crazy.
ball.
The people who didn't hear this in the past just think we're nutwads.
Dude, it's 85 degrees out right now, and it's freaking hot, and I've worked all day, and I'm tired.
Oh, wow.
Wah.
Yeah. All right, guys.
Okay.
So what's up with the tech tips? Who's going to go first?
All right, I'll start off. So, I've got, first of all, I don't know if I told this one last week. So I bought a roll of gaffer's tape, and I bought a roll of fluorescent gaffer's tape.
What? They make it in
And,
fluorescent?
Yeah. And gaffer's tape is universally helpful. And the fluorescent, I just wrap certain tools with it so I can find them. So my jewel of a tool is my metal knockdown, my VIP knockdown, and it's black and it's small, and I would lose it and I start panicking. I'd have these panic attacks. And finally I got the neon tape, wrap it with that so I can find it. But you can wrap old, if you got some old favorite tools, you start wearing out those handles, you just, and the rubber grip starts to break through or whatever, just wrap it with some grip tape, and it fixes the problem, gives you good grip, and just works for everything, So
yeah, I was in a panic today. Peter had sent me 2 VIP tips or knockdowns, and I had lost both of them today. Yesterday, I was in a panic, and so I texted him today, and fortunately I found the other one. But there is a cure to that, and that's my mat, which you don't have the magnetic version of it yet, but the Magnetech.
I had the very first version.
The very first, yeah. Those were just the prototypes, but the new version with the magnets, you guys don't have the magnetic version yet, but it does stick to that. So
love it.
It's so funny. Now Peter came down last week, and you, him, and Mike hung out, right?
Yes.
So you know how Mike always says he gives messages on Voxer, but he kind of like doesn't finish his sentences. He just kind of blurts everything together. Well, he told me that he was hanging out with Vince's Peter on Voxer, and I hit him back, and I'm like, "What did you just say, dude?" And he's like, "Oh, I'm hanging out with Vince and Peter." But the way he said it at the beginning, he said he was hanging out with Vince's Peter, and I'm like, "Oh, wait a second, buddy." So,
all right. Well, here's my tech tip: whoever needs to make some extra money at MTE should bring a redipping machine, so everyone can bring their tools and redip the handles on their tools.
That'd be a great idea,
right? Because we all throughout the years they go bad after a while, or they start to flake off and whatnot. Someone should bring Ultra or A1. They should bring their dipping machine and offer a redipping service for a nominal fee.
You think you can dip right over the old handle, or do you just razor blade them?
Just cut it off.
Razor them right off.
Yeah, it comes off really quick, actually.
Yeah.
Just make a slit in it, and it peels right off.
Yeah.
All right, John, what do you got?
Anything?
All right, yeah, I got a tech tip. It's kind of in line with what we're saying with the detailing stuff. We'll let you guys know, if you can get the tighter you can get your push pattern, if you do have to wet sand, the better, obviously. So the tighter the little pattern, the closer the surface is to each other, little highs and lows, the closer they are, the better your wet sanding is going to come out. But here's a little tech tip. When you do that wet sanding, as long as you don't do it too aggressive where you think you're going to burn through, but what you want to do is you can sand it down, right? And look at it afterwards, wipe it down so it's dry, and if you see a bunch of little shiny dots in there, well, that's your lows. That means your sandpaper never hit the bottom of the shiny dots. You might be able to go a little bit more aggressive. And what I found is the best finish, the best result when it comes to doing PDR repairs, when you have a tight-knit group of pushes and you sand it enough to where when you wipe it off and it's dry, there's no little shiny dots in between the sanding marks. And that means that you've pretty much leveled the entire surface into where it's totally flat. When you go to buff that off, it's going to look like a champ. You're not going to see any of your previous push marks, and there really is going to be very little lows to contend with at that point. And at that point, you may want to switch off to a soft tip and change your push pattern if you do happen to have a little shallow, because you might need to just push up a smaller spot than what you might have thought before.
And to feed into that a little bit too, with a continuation of the tech tip is, when I color sand and buff, that's not my last step. I usually come back and replace some pushes to give texture or to add back orange peel to it.
I agree. Yeah.
So I never use color sand and buff as my last process.
You're almost actually mimicking kind of a factory orange peel back to the surface with the tool.
Exactly. Yes.
Wow.
I actually use alcohol to do my buffing. I guess that's the lazy dent guy thing, but no, just the spray alcohol that we use out of our bottle, the 98% or whatever it is.
We all thought you meant you were drinking alcohol.
No.
Yeah.
And you know what? I've been like, people have asked me that before, like, use alcohol. I'm like, I see no different than water other than it dries really quick and it doesn't run down the whole side of the panel, leaving me a giant streak I got to freaking detail off afterwards. It literally, and when you use alcohol, when you do your wet sanding, you can see through it as you're doing your swipe. So you can see through it in the light, and you can actually kind of see the pattern come down if you look close enough.
So here's another thing the alcohol's doing for you too. If you use it at the end of, well, yeah, I mean, you don't see the dent anymore because you drank too much of it.
Right.
No, if you do it at the end of your polishing, it actually is removing the fillers. We use it in the shop every day. And so you can see exactly the results. So if you do your wet sand and you do your 2-stage polish you normally do, and then you wipe it down with alcohol, the fillers and the polishes and stuff are gone. You can see exactly what results you have. If you have scratches still.
Oh, wow.
Still there.
Oh, that's great right there.
Hey, and Quinn, is there an issue with sanding with using alcohol, using that as a lubricant?
I wouldn't think so. I've never tried it. I don't have a problem with it. If you use something that had a lubricant like a detail spray, then the sandpaper, I've tried that in a pinch. It does glide too fast across the surface.
Yeah.
I think the alcohol is cool. Yeah, it dries immediately, and you use it at the end. You've already got, so we buy like the 99.9%, and we dilute that about 50-50, and it works out to be better than, I think, the stuff over the store counter. But yeah, straight up, I mean, if you have it, use it. It works for you. I'm fine with it.
Now, I have run into cases where alcohol did melt the clear coat and soften up the clear coat, so I would be careful.
Oh,
okay.
man.
Where, dude, like I went to go take a tab.
Fresh paint?
Yeah, fresh. No, not fresh paint.
Well, that's why.
No, factory paint. I've squirted alcohol on a glue tab, and then got distracted and went and did something or a phone call and came back, and you saw the drip marks actually eat into the
yeah, I've seen that happen.
That is weird when that happens.
Like that too, actually, not with alcohol, but I've seen stuff like that in other instances.
How'd you fix it, Vince? Was you able to buff it out?
I actually heated it up. I did it kind of like how we get the suction cup marks.
Yeah, right.
From our suction cup rings, and I heated it up, and I believe I had to color sand and polish when it did happen.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Leave a tab. Put a tab on a car and squirt some alcohol on it and walk away. See what happens.
Well, I think it has to do with a different paint finish too.
Yeah, that's
true.
Because
you got to be careful. Like Ford trucks, you got to be careful sanding them because they leave these gouge sand marks. There's certain paint surfaces that are just finicky out there, and the more experience you have, the better you know. So I found one time I accidentally left gouge marks in Ford paint, and I found that sanding in a circle was much better than sanding in straight lines.
I think that's because Ford paint has such aggressive orange peel.
That's probably has a little bit to do with it, but it seems softer. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I get you.
Yeah, it seems softer to me. So, all right, guys, I guess that closes out our show. Quinn, man, I guarantee you that you dropped some knowledge bombs on some of the dent technicians out there, and hopefully you can keep us out of certain types of trouble we tend to get into. And to close out, I'm going to tell you guys, make sure you don't get any metal shavings in them microfiber towels. You'll be hating life. And but anyhow, we appreciate having you along, Quinn. And
yes, Quinn, thanks for coming on. And listen, if you have any problems with Daniel, just let us know. We'll take care of them.
Oh, I've got problems with Daniel.
Just slap some duct tape on his back and just rip it really fast.
Yeah.
That's like I can see 40-year-old virgin right now. Remember that? Did you play in that movie, Daniel?
Yeah.
Was that you?
Yeah, just put it on his back muff. That little tuft of hair right above his waistline. Slap it on there.
All right, Daniel, and what you say, bro?
Level up your tools.
And join the revolution. And Vince, can you do it for Mike?
Don't do anything that I wouldn't do twice. Was that it?
Yep, you got it. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one.